nothing else going on today. This is our date night. Because we're weirdos.
Hello and welcome to my tour of the Forest Fair Village, aka Cincinnati Mall, aka Cincinnati Mills, and probably best known as Forest Fair Mall. I'll be your cruise director, Kristen, and this is Unicom Productions. I've been wanting to start doing dead mall videos for a while and wanted to start with this one. I grew up in and still live in Cincinnati, and I'm old enough to remember when the mall opened in 1988 and was new and vital, however brief that period of vitality was. It was the best way to spend a rainy Saturday when I was 7, hands down. In addition to my own memories, I did a deep dive at the Cincinnati Enquirer archives to put together a timeline and the story of how the mall was born and reborn over and over, only to get to where we are today. On a Saturday in June 2018, my co-explorer and I visited the mall to see what sort of condition the now essentially empty mall was in. As someone with so many fond memories of the place, it was really sad. I hadn't been there to really take a look around in about a year, and there were a lot of things that had happened even since I'd been there last. The original plans began for the mall in 1985, and the concept was a value mall with tenants like TJ Maxx and Marshalls. An Australian firm, LJ Hooker, was in charge of the planning and execution, and the concept was abandoned in favor of an ultra-luxury concept. It was considered a very ambitious, potentially disastrous plan, partially due to the location and the demographics of the area in which it was located. Forest Park and Fairfield, the two neighborhoods the mall is situated between and where it derives its name from, Forest Fair, are blue-collar middle income. The concept would sink or swim based on the mall becoming an attraction drawing shoppers from a wide area. There were already 2 established malls within a 10-minute drive of the site, Northgate and Tri-County, between whom pretty much any anchor that was known and popular with Cincinnati shoppers already had a location. The new Forest Fair Mall would be the largest in Ohio, at over 1.5 million square feet when it opened, and had spaces for over 7 anchors. The developers were having some difficulty luring large retailers to occupy the spaces, and purchased controlling interest in 3 chains: Texas-based Sakowitz and 2 New York-based department stores, B. Altman and Bonwit Teller. They also purchased a smaller interest in the Alabama-based chain Parisian, who opened locations in Forest Fair, as well as 2 other malls in Cincinnati. The lineup of anchors was completed by Elder Bierman, based in nearby Dayton, Ohio, who was signed when Cleveland, Ohio's Higbee's pulled out, in Biggs, a hypermarket who sold both groceries and general merchandise, who would be opening their 2nd location in the Cincinnati area. This was kind of a novel concept at the time because we didn't have things like Walmart Supercenter. Biggs was the first anchor to sign back when the concept for the mall was still a value mall and not a super luxury destination. The mall would also feature an 18-hole miniature golf course, a Ferris wheel, a carousel, carnival-style games and rides, an 8-screen movie theater, and a 2-story food court. The mall would open in stages. In July of 1988, the wing of the mall that featured Biggs opened, and during the holiday seasons of 1988, local advertisements were run touting bigger things are yet to come, and there were. The entire mall would open in March 1989 with a gala ribbon cutting, featuring celebrity guests Phyllis Diller and fancy door prizes such as crystal carousel horses. The mall was dazzling, brass roof beams covered with sparkling white lights with glass skylights above each corridor. I'd like to take a moment here and shift gears to discuss some of the really noticeable things about the appearance of the food court. This sort of whimsical underwater look was the result of the remodel that took place in 2004, which I'll get into greater detail here in a moment. The theme of this food court was picnic on the river, so there's light fixtures that sort of look like bobbers, some benches around the columns that look like buoys, etc., and the floor, it's this sort of plasticky material. There's bubbles in it, and you can see them when the light hits it. It's kind of funny that the bubbles fit in with that theme, but it's definitely not what they intended. Allow us to demonstrate exactly what these bubbles are like to walk on.
Fixtures that look like bobbers. Oh God. Okay, I just want to take a second to show everybody this. The floor is super soft. It's literally falling apart. Like
this is my
hazardous
boyfriend
and
Ron. Most of the really good, steady, long shots you see in this video were his, as well as the pop-up video style commentary you see along the bottom. He has much more experience with video and audio editing than me, and I couldn't have done this without his help, so thank you so much for your support in helping to get this accomplished. This is the movie theater, which was remodeled at the same time as the rest of the mall. When the mall opened in 1989, the theater was called Super Saver Cinemas 8, and it had a glass block facade with red and blue lights that flashed. You'll see a photo of what it looked like on the screen as I'm talking. It's hard to describe to someone who didn't see it in person just how ridiculous it looked. It didn't make noise, but it was almost like you could hear it. It's the best way I know how to describe it. It was so bright and flashy, it was literally giving people seizures, and that's not an exaggeration. They had to slow it down, and it ultimately had to be turned off altogether. Inside the theater lobby were still more nightclub-style neon-colored and moving lights. It was unlike anything I'd seen before when I was a kid, and really unlike anything I've seen outside of someplace like Disney World since. It was completely over the top. And the most stunning thing was that this theater was a discount theater. You can hear it in its name. It was Super Saver Cinemas. It was a second-run theater. Just like everything else in the mall, those lights didn't last long. One by one, as the bulbs burned out, they weren't replaced until it was just like any other theater lobby until it closed. Speaking of things that didn't last long, let's get back to the story of how things started to go downhill. The mall talked a big game. Newspaper advertisements from March 1989 tout Time Out on the Court, the entertainment complex, as the first of its kind, and the mall itself as America's first super mall. I specifically remember things like a Star Search contestant audition event being held in a large center court. This sort of would have been like American Idol auditions at the time. The fanfare didn't last long, however. By June of 1989, only 3 months after the full opening, the mall had been placed up for sale. In July, the head of L.J. Hooker and the mastermind of the mall's concept, George Herskew, had filed for bankruptcy protection, and by September of the same year, the firm itself had as well. In October of 1990, Bonwit Teller closed its doors, and by the following month, B. Altman and Sakowitz had followed suit. In an article about the state of the mall published in the Cincinnati Enquirer in June of 1990, the occupancy level of the mall was quoted at 65%, and by summer of 1991 it had fallen further to 56%. Around this time, a sale was completed to FFM Limited Partnership, a group of 7 lenders comprised of veterans of the retail industry, to try to turn the mall's fortunes around. A children's beach-style play area with real sand was opened in the large center court area. The mall was rebranded as 4 smaller sub-malls. The Biggs Wing, which now also housed a CompUSA computer superstore, was now branded the Markets of Forest Fair. The wing that held Elder Beerman and led to Parisian, that housed many of the mall's clothing and accessory stores, was branded the Fashions at Forest Fair. And the wing that led to the now vacant B. Altman was branded Lifestyles and was now home to a Sam Goody superstore and a sizable Little Professor booksellers. The biggest and most novel part of the new strategy was the Festival at Forest Fair, a restaurant and bar complex that opened in August of 1993 in the former Bonwit Teller space that was prominently located off of Center Court. The space was fully renovated to resemble an outdoor space with cobblestone streets and cast iron streetlights running between the various new places to eat and drink. For a period of time during 1992 and 1994, things were looking up. Occupancy rose to 75% and Kohl's department store opened, who will remain as an anchor to this day. However, restaurants and bars in the festival began to close in 1995, and the mall once again began to lose retailers. An advertisement run in 1995 in April proudly touts that the mall has over 100 shops and restaurants, which sounds really impressive until you remember that the mall has spaces for over 200. It's kind of like saying, we're not half empty, we're half full. Dowahair's, who had opened in the empty Sakowitz space, closed in early 1996, and the mall was sold for the second time since its opening to Gator Investments of Florida. Gator's changes to the mall began slowly. In 1998, Parisian and CompUSA would leave the mall to be replaced with Bass Pro Shops and Guitar Center within 12 months, respectively. These new tenants were joined by Media Play, a book, movie, and music retailer. Also in 1998, the long-present and loved Time Out on the Court with its carousel, miniature golf, and games closed to make way for a second, first-run movie theater. Wonder Park, a smaller amusement park and arcade run by Namco, would open in the Coles Wing across from Media Play, and the now empty Festival at Forest Fair space would become occupied by a Burlington coat factory in 2001. Despite all this movement on the part of the larger anchor stores, and attempts by Gator to renovate and give the mall a facelift, fewer than 50 stores remained by 2002 when the mall was purchased by the Mills Corporation, who had big plans to completely renovate and rebrand the mall. In 2003, the remaining 30 interior-facing tenants were asked to leave or relocate in order for the large-scale planned renovations inside the mall to take place, and the mall would reopen on August 19th of 2004 as Cincinnati Mills. Before we head into the Mills era, though, let's take a break for the pause that refreshes. I think I should get a
Glass Coke machine.
You think I should get a Coke and see how old it is?
Hold on.
It's probably like super expired, babe.
We're getting no, I doubt it. We're getting water.
Mellow.
Holy shit! This is the first time I ever actually get to use this.
Oh. Are you gonna get a mellow yellow?
Oh god, the buttons are so blue.
Ew. Look at that. The soda machine still works.
Oh, it's cold.
Wow. And it's cold.
I don't think water expires. I have made a bad choice. I failed. It looks like new. I'd imagine that the Coke, the local bottling company.
Well, it's got to be
services
fairly
this.
new because the Cokes have like the share a Coke with
Yeah,
Courtney
they've got
thing
the
on
names
it.
on
Share a Coke with Alan. Share a Dasani with Ronald.
June 18th.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're brand new.
Yeah, they are. Welcome back. As I was saying, the mall reopened on August 19, 2004 as Cincinnati Mills. The mall boasted 90% occupancy at opening, but I remember going to the opening weekend and many of the spaces that were occupied were sort of strange. I specifically remember one that sold hotel surplus furnishings, for instance, and another that was like a tiny version of Harbor Freight, only with boxes lined up on the floor. There were $3 stores. There were a lot of mom-and-pop stores with sort of unusual concepts that were there because the Mills Corp clearly wanted to be able to boast a high occupancy rate, and it offered retail space for a drastically reduced price. Cincinnati Mills suffered from many of the same problems with tenancy the Forest Fair Mall had. With Tri-County and Northgate so close by, many of the mall's standby shops were already established there, and it was hard to lure locations of them to this new mall that was so close, especially when many of these chains had already tried to open there and failed less than 10 years prior. By 2005, Media Play had closed, and the Johnny's Toys, a local institution that had been open a few miles away for decades, closed the location they had moved to in the mall when it reopened. The Mills Corporation began to suffer financial problems not only due to Cincinnati Mills, but many of its properties nationwide underperforming, including the infamous $100 Mall in Pittsburgh and St. Louis Mills. Mills owned 42 malls in the U.S. at the time. In April 2007, the mall gained its fifth owner over its 19-year life as Simon Property Group took over. During this period of time, the Mills Corporation began being investigated by the Securities and Exchange Commission due to accounting irregularities. In 2008, the mall lost Wonder Park and Biggs as tenants. By March 2009, the mall was only 44% occupied and it was sold to North Star Realty. As part of the deal, the name was required to be changed to Cincinnati Mall, as the Mills name was a trademark property of the Simon Corp. Between 2009 and 2010, the mall lost Showcase Cinema, the first-run theater that had opened, Steve & Barry's, who were occupying an entire anchor space by this point, and off 5th, a clearance center for Saks Fifth Avenue that had moved to a brand new outlet mall that had just opened. North Star Realty sold the mall yet again in 2010 to Cincinnati Holding Company, LLC, who remain owners to this day. In 2013, the name was officially changed to Forest Fair Village. However, no evidence is present on the property that this is so. All the signage within the property still shows Cincinnati Mall.
Shout out to Dan Bell. Horrible fake plants. At least they're not dusty. Ooh, what have we got down in here?
What is the future of this behemoth retail shrine? FC Cincinnati, the newly minted Major League Soccer team, passed on using the property to build a new stadium. A production company has expressed interest in using it to film movies and TV shows. Plans have been unveiled in the last 4 to 5 years to convert parts of the property to a hotel, a sports complex, even a police or military training facility, but none have fully come to fruition. However, there is some evidence that the media play space has been used for police training at some point. There's signs up. All joking aside, this once absolutely gorgeous building is in a sad state of affairs. A lot of the Mills remodel, while cute and colorful, were done cheaply and actually did a lot to downgrade the opulence of the original design. They have clearly not stood the test of time. It's interesting that there are other malls that were developed by the Hooker firm at the same time that seem to have aged better than this one that weren't remodeled. The inflatable fish that once hung over the food court hangs slack and empty. The once shining brass beams were covered with drywall. Glass skylights covered with plaster, now crumbling and exposing the interior to the elements. I want to point out that during our visit to the mall, we saw only one security guard. Despite warnings from others that security was vigilant and quite strict about photos and video, he didn't seem particularly interested in stopping us. In fact, there were several other groups of 2 or so people doing exactly what we were. The arcade, that is the only interior tenant, does quite well on the weekends. He seemed there primarily to corral children and teenagers bound for the arcade. However, we didn't want to disobey a sign that we were clearly not supposed to cross. We drove around the exterior of the building, and here is where the true decay and the just disrepair of the mall has been allowed to fall into is really evident. There's a 4-level parking garage that you're only allowed to access a very small portion of the bottom level of. At one time, there was a nightclub complex on the top level of the parking garage, and we drove past it. But since there was a chain, we didn't want to be running the risk of being asked to leave. That nightclub complex was called Bourbon Street when it first located there. It was moved there after the festival was deemed a failure. It was later changed to Metropolis, and its last incarnation was Place 2B, as you can see on the signage there. This was the last area we visited, and by this point, after seeing all the holes all the way to the sky and the ceiling, you'd think we were immune to seeing decay, but nothing quite prepared us for this.
it's like something out of Resident Evil. Oh, Jesus, a lurker is gonna get me.
Entry, if you dare.
Jesus.
Oh, good Lord.
This is like prime, like, creepypasta material. Like, there are people on the No Sleep subreddit who are going to watch this video and be like, oh.
There is something for everyone at the Cincinnati Mills Mall, Forest Fair Village.
The Cincinnati Mills Mall and Nightmare Factory.
Dude in it who like might not be real happy with us filming.
Oh, it's got the spare. They got that one. The security is literally worn off the side of it.
The spare is flat.
Even the spare is flat. The security is worn down. That right there is so apropos of everything with this mall.
It is.
Even the renovations are fucked.
Yes.
We'll edit that out. We'll leave that.
I want to take a second to give a shout out and thanks to the fine people of the Dead Malls Discord. I've been spending weeks bouncing ideas off you folks and you've been super patient. You're awesome and I hope you enjoyed watching this as much as we enjoyed making it. And to all of you I haven't met as well, there is a Dead Malls Discord and the link will be in the description for this video. This is Unicom Productions signing off until next time. We have a lot of plans going forward, so please like and subscribe because we'd love to surprise you with what's next. Thanks for watching.